Hello everyone, happy Halloween and welcome to another Rewind review. In this video I'm taking a look at an animated classic, and that is Tim Burton's Corpse Bride. Released in 2005, when a shy groom practices his wedding vows in the inadvertent presence of a deceased young woman, she rises from the grave assuming he has married her. Directed by Tim Burton and Mike Johnson and written by John August, Caroline Thompson and Pamela Petler, the movie features the vocal performances of Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, Emily Watson, Richard E. Grant, Albert Finney, Joanna Lumley and Christopher Lee. I don't know why, but I always assumed that Tim Burton wrote the screenplay. Nope, on the writing side, he only helped create the characters. Again. But this is actually the first stop-motion animated movie that he directed. Anywho, I'm going to show my age here. I remember seeing the trailers for this movie before it came out, and I remember going to see this in cinemas. I think it might have been a preview weekend or something because it was quite empty. The funny thing is, I initially didn't want to see this as a kid. I had seen some of the trailers for this, and to me it looked a little bit creepy. But my mum really wanted to see it, so she took me along to the cinema when it came out. That makes it sound like, "Mum, I'm scared, come with me. Can you hold my hand?" Anyway, but it really surprised me how different this movie turned out to be, and how much I enjoyed it. It wasn't a film that I would rewatch regularly, especially all the way through, but it is one of those movies that anytime I catch it on TV, I leave it on until the end. And seeing as Corpse Bride turns 20 this year, and we are in the middle of spooky season, it seemed like the prime opportunity to do a proper rewatch of this movie. So, does it hold up? Do I still enjoy it? Let's take a look at Corpse Bride. Corpse Bride takes place in the 1800s and sees Victor Van Dort and his bride-to-be Victoria Evergloss rehearsing their arranged wedding, set up by their parents. But when things go wrong, Victor finds himself alone in the woods to practice his vows. And as luck would have it, just as he gets them right, he finds himself married to Emily, the Corpse Bride. Now stuck in the afterlife, Victor has to find his way back to the land of the living, while a rich newcomer makes a play for Victoria's hand in marriage. And Victor finds himself with a choice, to return and be with Victoria, or stay in the afterlife with Emily. I didn't actually know this until I started doing research for this review. This movie is actually based on an old Jewish folktale called The Finger. The basic premise is the same, but it plays out quite differently. It's worth looking into, but it was surprising finding out that this was based on something else, because this does feel very much like a Tim Burton creation. It's weird, it's dark and twisted in all the best ways. It does have a dark sense of humour sprinkled throughout this to stop it from getting too dark, but it also has a proper emotional core. That's what caught me off guard the first time that I saw this movie, because I was expecting a full-on horror film, albeit one aimed at families. And I'm not saying that this doesn't have any horror elements to it. There's 3 sequences that are quite tense, especially for a family film. And in terms of the overall story, it is shockingly quite dark for a PG movie, but you do find yourself emotionally invested in this. And it is kind of heartbreaking. No word of a lie. I know how this movie ends. I'd seen the ending multiple times. I still ended up getting a little lump in my throat. It could very well be nostalgia, I won't rule that out, but it does still have some emotional power. The basic story, I do think it's quite simple, and it does have a few really nice twists up its sleeve that I really liked. It's easy to follow, it's paced out well, and it does everything that it needs to. The total runtime for this movie is 18 minutes, that's an hour and 20 minutes long, and I think that's the perfect runtime for this film. There is a bit of me that does think that this could have been a bit longer, and allowed more time to develop the relationships between the characters. I do like the fairy tale angle where it does seem to be love at first sight for Victor and Victoria, but I feel they could have done a bit more there. Their marriage is arranged because of money reasons or a desire to be part of upper class society. So Victor and Victoria don't actually meet until the rehearsal. When we get introduced to these characters, they've never met, and this is the first time that they've encountered each other. And we do get a really nice scene of them bonding. But I do feel like they could have added a little bit more time to really explore their relationship and expand on it a bit further, especially considering just how much they care for each other by the end. Or change the marriage so it isn't an arranged one, it's Victor and Victoria calling the shots. Have them both already know each other and their parents are pushing for them to get married as early as possible. That way there's already a connection between them, and I think that it would work a little bit better. And it wouldn't change too much of the plot either. I mean, it would still rely on a monumental coincidence in order for the plot to happen. All those trees in the forest, and he happens to place the ring on that exact branch. And it's not even the right finger. This is making it sound like I don't like this movie. I do, don't worry. This is just stuff that crossed my mind. But to reiterate, and nitpicky things aside, I do think that this movie is still emotionally investing, and I do think that the emotional stuff does hit and work well, because the characters are likeable and easy to empathise with. They may not be the most developed characters by any means, but they are engaging and their motivations are pretty simple and clear to anyone of every age. And as I said, they are likeable. At least the good guys are. Apart from Maggot the Worm. I've never really liked him. I feel a bit harsh singling him out, but I really don't get what his deal is. He just feels like one of those characters that would happily double-cross anyone, and he is way too gleeful when the prospect of killing Victor comes up. Anyway, even if the characters are quite straightforward, they are quite memorable for different reasons, and I really love the voice cast as well. A lot of the actors that appear in this are Tim Burton regulars. Most of them have either worked with him once or twice before or after this movie came out, and everyone is perfect. Some of the more experienced voice actors actually do more than one voice. Tracy Ullman and Paul Whitehouse as Victor's parents, Joanna Lumley and Albert Finney as Victoria's parents, Jane Horrocks as the Black Widow Spider, Anne Reitel as Maggot, the legends that are Christopher Lee as the very intense pastor who almost gets to say, "You shall not pass," and Michael Gough as the skeletal Elder Gutnicht, and Richard E. Grant on Pitch Perfect baddie duty as the charming yet slimy Barkis Bitten. And then of course we have the main trio, Johnny Depp as Victor, Emily Watson as Victoria, and Helena Bonham Carter as Emily. There is definitely some echoes of Jack Skellington and Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas when it comes to Victor and Emily, including the dog Scraps, but they do still feel quite different. As characters, all three are likeable and get a good amount of screen time each, but as I said, I feel they could have done a bit more regarding the love story and how it's resolved. I actually think that Victor should fall for Emily, because he doesn't really. And it's quite drastic what he does. He wants to stay with Emily because he can't be with Victoria. And there's only one way for him to do that. You see what I mean about this being dark? So I feel that could be changed. And maybe during the finale you could have Emily say something to Victor like, "I didn't get a chance to live my life, but I don't want to stop you from living yours." It just expands on what does get said during that scene, but I do think that it does work as is. But this is just a thought, you don't have to agree. And as for the voice performances, the tones of each voice fit perfectly for each character. They don't feel forced and sound natural. It's very hard to imagine another actor doing any of the voices in this because of how each performer plays their roles. How each performer uses their voice, it fits the character really well, and it enhances their characteristics and emotions. And then, on top of that, the lip sync. I can't even begin to explain how amazing it is. It's one aspect of animation that I honestly don't know how they do it. I really don't. And this one really pushes that technique even further. I don't know if this is one of the first animated movies to do this, but they used a technique to animate the characters in this that's vastly different to things like Wallace and Gromit. With the Wallace and Gromit animation, anytime a facial expression needs to change, the animators either remove and replace individual facial features or sometimes the entire heads. In this one, they use these really advanced facial mechanisms that involve screws that can be turned to alter how someone looks. So what they were using for each character was a lot closer to puppet and puppetry as opposed to traditional clay animation. It's really cool, and I've never actually seen them do this before, but it looks amazing. There's still over 200 models that they actually made for this movie, but even so, it is still impressive. It's not only smoother, but it allows for more nuanced expressions and subtleties that you wouldn't normally be able to do. And here's a bit of trivia for you. Leica Animation Studios, the people who worked on Coraline, on Paranorman, Kubo and the Two Strings, they worked on this movie before they were called Leica. It suddenly makes sense why the animation in this movie is so good now, doesn't it? On the technical side, compared to things like Nightmare Before Christmas and even Wallace and Gromit, which came out the exact same month, this is on another level. The movements of each character, the detail in their designs and costumes, especially anything that flows, hangs or gets ripped, or even characters' hair and how that's influenced by its environment, including rain. I'm resisting the urge to make fun of Mrs. Everglott's very suspicious looking hair. Anyway, this movie can't entirely have been hand animated, can it? Oh yes, they did. I honestly had to look up if they did use any CGI to enhance that stuff because it looks way too smooth and detailed. I cannot find a single trace of them using CG outside of things like crows, butterflies and a few elements in the background. It's astonishingly good and I genuinely cannot get my head around how they made this movie. The Bone Jangle skeleton dance number where Victor finds out about Emily's backstory is one of the best stop motion animated sequences I have ever seen. Just how? It's so good! And then, on top of that, you add the almost film-like cinematography with fades, focus-pulling camera movements, the gorgeous lighting and shadow play, the way Foley is used as part of the sound design. This is incredible. And then when it comes to the sets and locations, there's so much detail to them. They really do feel very lived in with lots of history. One of my favourite aspects about the creative side of this movie is the contrast between the two worlds. The real world, the land of the living, is dark, desaturated, gothic, everyone's depressed and looks tired. And then in the afterlife, it's bright, it's colourful, and ironically, it's full of life. It's a great addition that adds another layer to this movie. And nowhere is it more obvious than the simultaneous wedding ceremonies. The bit where it cuts between what's going on in the afterlife and what's going on in the real world It's so jarring and it's brilliant. And lastly, yes, this is a musical, and music is an important part of this movie. The music and songs for Corpse Bride were created by Tim Burton's go-to composer Danny Elfman. This is another area where it does feel very Tim Burton-esque, because this soundtrack does sound very similar to a lot of Tim Burton's previous movies and Danny Elfman's soundtracks. In fact, there's actually a scene where Victor is climbing a wall to try and get away from Emily, and for a few seconds there's a few speckles of the Spider-Man soundtrack. To be fair, he did the same with Wednesday. It's very sneaky, but even with the similarities, it fits perfectly and it sounds beautiful. Beautifully haunting, I should say. But then, there's also a strong, almost jazz-like feel to it, especially during the scenes in the afterlife where it does feel more lively and upbeat, and that's something that really aids in the contrast. The songs as well I really like. They're fun and varied, and the musical sequences are some of the most memorable scenes. They don't add a humongous amount to the film, and there's not that many of them for a musical, but they do help tell the story and fill in some backstory in a unique and engaging way. Plus, Danny Elfman provides the vocals and singing performance for Bojangles. He also performed a song called Erased, and that's a deleted song that Victor would have sung. It's beautiful and fits perfectly within the story, especially when it comes to Victor and what he decides to do. And after hearing it quite recently, I am a little annoyed that they did cut it. If you haven't heard it before and you do like this movie, I do think that it is worth looking into. But as it is, the soundtrack, the songs and the musical segments are really good. Overall, this is an absolutely amazing movie and definitely among Tim Burton's best. While there is a few elements that don't quite work or could have done with a little tweaking, this was a game changer for stop motion animation. The look and style, the movements of the characters, the voice performances, the sound design, the music and songs. This really is incredible. I can't say if this will be for everyone, but I do think that this is a film that deserves your attention. It may be a little scary and dark for young viewers, but I do think that this is a great family movie to watch over Halloween. It still holds up. It is brilliant and I really enjoy it. So with all that being said, my rating for Corpse Bride is an 8 out of 10. Well, that is pretty much everything I want to say for this video, so if you have watched this video, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please be sure to like, subscribe and hit that notification button. If you have seen Corpse Bride, let me know down in the comments what you think about it. Plus, if you have any suggestions for any future rewind reviews you would like to see me do in the future, let me know down below. But until next time, thank you very much for watching and I shall see you in the next video. Happy Halloween.